from the salmon business.
Right. So I think then the chances are that Barnet Salmon met his future wife because he was working with her father.
Yeah. I mean, you'd probably seen her on a daily basis.
Yes, from when, yes.
Yeah.
What stage did Salmon and Gluckstein become a company together?
1870 is the earliest date.
1870, so that would be like 7 years after they married.
That's right. The marriage was a crucial element in the building of both the Salmon and Gluckstein dynasty and, following on from that, the J. Lyons dynasty.
I think I was clearly wrong in my assumption. I feel it was rather crass now saying that Barnet just married the boss's daughter, because I think that it obviously wasn't that. I mean, clearly the marriage was incredibly important because it helped form Salmon and Gluckstein. And I think it's really clear as well that it was crucial in the making of Lyons later.
It does make me think, though, because although I know how successful Barnet became, I don't really know what drove him, and I find that fascinating. And I think to find that out, I'd like to know about his beginnings more. I mean, I know he came from an immigrant family, but I know nothing about him in his early years, and I'd like to delve into his childhood a bit to find out about him then.
I've managed to track something down on 1841. The parish is Christchurch Spitalfields, in other words, the East End. There's a 12-year-old Barnet, there's a 9-year-old Rebecca, there's a 7-year-old Sophia, Harriet, 11, and I think there's a 1-year-old Asher. So Barnet's father was a clothes dealer, and like nearby I could see a bricklayer, a tailor, a labourer, a shoemaker. So in other words, I would say working-class district in the East End. Quite a few other Jewish people.
Nigella searches for the family 10 years later.
Asher is not here. And Harriet is missing.
I mean, in itself, it doesn't tell me that much, that 2 children have apparently vanished. But of course, it doesn't take a huge leap of imagination to work out, I mean, you think of the time and the conditions, that something bad has obviously happened.
Fearing the worst, Nigella's come to search through certificates at the Family Records Centre.
So, Asher died in March 42, and Harriet in November 42, so that's pretty near one another. God, imagine that for the parents. And anyway, for Barnet, I mean, he must have been 13. I wonder if you can help me. Can you help me with some of this, what it means,
Certainly.
like water on the brain?
Water on the brain is, the medical name for it is encephalitis.
Right,
and it's
yes.
Basically a fluid build-up in the brain, usually caused by bacterial infection.
Oh, really?
Yes. The main reason for that would possibly be unsanitary or poor living conditions.
Yes.
And that one,
Dropsy.
dropsy, that's edema, which is, again, it's a fluid build-up in any organ. The most common one is pulmonary edema. Possibly caused by malnutrition.
Malnutrition?
That's the main reason, yes.
Really?
Does that any help, yes?
It is. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's very different from all those big Lyons houses and everything, isn't it? So obviously a very small house, a lot of children, no money, no food, and no sanitary conditions. This is certainly pretty grim.
Barnet was determined to break away from the poverty of his background. He escaped the East End slums in his early 20s and began to build a reputation as a tobacco dealer. After his marriage to Helena, he never looked back. In 1887, he used the huge profits from the Salmon and Gluckstein business to invest in a new catering venture, J. Lyons. The company was named after Joseph Lyons, a distant relative brought in to run it. Barnet remained a director with a 1/3 share of the business. He died at the age of 68, leaving his widow Helena a grand house in Paddington.
So she's got a lot of people living with her. She's got her 6 children, she's got 2 grandsons, a nephew, a brother-in-law, a niece, and 7 servants. A cook, a parlourmaid, a housemaid, a kitchen maid, a French chambermaid, Elise, and a French governess, Honorée, and a hospital nurse who is sick. Looks like. I have to say, I do think Helena's obviously been left very comfortably off. I like to think she has become a grand and imposing matriarch, and she has a rather well-padded and elegant life. I like that. And actually, you know, I've got something else which is Barnet Salmon's will. It has in it, just rather charmingly, I think, the first point is, I wish to be buried in England and that my funeral should be simple and inexpensive.
Barnet left £46,500, the equivalent today of 3.4 million.
There's Barnet. You know, I like that Barnet's grave is modest, and I like it that he particularly requested that. I think that's something that to me tallies with, you know, the whole thing that I know now about his life. I can't help but attribute to him some of the qualities I remember from my grandfather, Felix, who was his grandson. So I tend to think of him as someone quite withdrawn, quite measured, with quite a strong interior life. That thing of a modesty and absolute austere lack of vanity. Well, I feel I've covered Barnet now, but then he's only half of the Salmon and Gluckstein story. So what I'd like to do now is find out a bit more about his business partner, Samuel Gluckstein.
Nigella's come to visit her brother Dominic at his Sussex house.
Who are you looking for?
I'm looking for Samuel, who was Helena's father and therefore Barnet's father-in-law.
Yeah.
Samuel Gluckstein was born in Rheinberg, Prussia in 1821. Both he and his wife Hannah Joseph were first-generation immigrants to England. They married in 1845.
There is what may be a family legend that, in fact, they did meet in England, in London, and that Hannah was already there, and she nursed him. He was quite frail.
Oh, right.
And they formed an attachment.
I'm going to try and look up Hannah. She's Hannah Joseph, isn't she?
Yes.
The census could show whether Samuel lodged with Hannah before they married.
So they lived, they're 106, look at their address, 106 Freeman Street.
In 1841, Hannah's still single, living in Freeman Street with her father Coleman.
So Coleman...
So that's the father?
Yes.
Shoemaker?
Coleman was a shoemaker.
But there's no sign of Samuel. So Nigella tries again,